You posed an interesting topic idea the other day over Signal, which was sort of that we thought we were going to help companies build things, and that is still true, but we are realizing that the place of greatest need inside of most of the businesses that we work with or have met with is actually deciding what to build and to be honest about where they are in the process of deciding what to build. And so I thought that was a great place for us to sort of hang out today. It really crystallized for me when you showed me, I think it was, you explained, it was Ben from out west there had written a blog post about like -1 to 0, and you were like, oh shit, that's actually what we're doing. So maybe you just want to expand on that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like sometimes you read things and it's just like rings so true. And yeah, it was Ben from Highline, and he posted on LinkedIn just kind of like this dissertation on this super messy phase of product development, -1 to 0, where all of us are so used to talking about going from 0 to 1. And like the way that he broke it down, it like hit the nail on the head for me in terms of that experience that you just mentioned that we are used to going through with clients. And it's one where clients love to come and say, hey, listen, we're looking for some help going 0 to 1 on this product. And like, here's what the product is. Can you come and help us build it? And I mean, like, we're builders. We definitely have build experience. Personally, I love to build, and I love to build these complex products, and kind of like lay over unique and creative elements that are proprietary to the brands that we work with. But a lot of times what ends up happening is we get in, and like you said, they're actually not at that stage to start building. They want to be at that stage, and I think that there's some reasons on that. We'll talk about it for a minute, but we actually end up kind of like going like into negative integers. We go from 0 back to -1. And everybody gets a little tense at that stage because they think that they should be seeing, something tangible from like, obviously bringing on consultants and like getting a team around things. And it can be a bit of a scary place for a lot of businesses to operate in if they haven't planned to operate there. And I think that that's where I'm finding is like there's a lot of value to bringing like some awareness and like driving companies to be self-aware that they're in that stage, and that's totally fine, and here's what to expect out of it.
I actually just wrote that down, if they haven't planned to be there. And I mean, it's so true, right? Is like, even in your personal life, when you aren't honest with yourself about, the effort that something is going to take or whatever it may be, you end up in it and just frustrated, and it's hard to extract out of it because you've made commitments to yourself or you've made commitments to others. And is this really simply explained as a lack of investment in user research though, or is it I feel like that's a big component of it. Is even generally speaking, of all the places you've navigated in financial services and fintech and payments in Canada, I feel like a lot of the decision making is us looking south and saying, well, this company launched this 6 months ago, this company launched that 12 months ago. Like, is anybody going out and talking to users, or are we doing it enough?
Yeah. So let's talk about what that kind of like -1 to 0 stage is. And It's really like the stage that is that deep product validation. And I think that what we're used to doing in that stage, or like culture, product culture, hustle culture has brought to the table, is it's really introduced this idea that like, all these things are important, talking to users are important, but what the most important thing is like getting a product to market and like failing fast and just like iterating. And I think that all those things are actually super important, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of times that's happening in the 0 to 1 phase after a corporation has announced a big objective and put a whole bunch of resources against the project and put this pressure to build and build fast and learn and iterate on a large group of people. And like there's already been a big bet placed, and everybody on that team has worked on some other project that got started and stopped in the middle of the build process and is fearful that that is going to happen again. So, instead, I think that, where the focus needs to be is still on that, like, testing and iterating and failing fast, but with the appropriately scaled team and set of resources behind it, being self-aware of what stage they're in. And so I think a lot of companies, they definitely look south. I think that there's some confirmation bias in terms of they've come up with a single idea that sounds really, really great. And they've got a hypothesis and listen, maybe they did talk to some users. Maybe they did some market segmentation. Maybe they did some competitor research and they've really latched onto that one idea. What I really don't think happens, I think that transition into 0 to 1 happens super, super quickly because you don't want to be proven wrong, right? I think it's only like human to not want to be proven wrong that there might be a better idea out there or a different customer segment that's worth serving more than the one that you've chosen. Like, it's a lot deeper than just a product idea is I think the point, especially when you look at it through the lens of just like business. Right? It's not trying to launch a product, it's trying to deliver value to a certain group of customers. And so there's so many different dimensions that need to be explored as you approach that problem. So I just think that like companies generally are really, really quick to jump out of that really messy phase because it is so uncomfortable and get towards building. Whereas, spending, maybe a few months versus a few weeks in that phase, you would get to a completely different place before you drop the bag on a whole team around something that's going to figure out the same insight 2, 3, 4 months down the road.
I live in that discomfort. I love that discomfort. But I don't know that I fully agree with, the notion that, or at least in our experience, I haven't observed companies coming to us with like an idea that is crystallized. I think because we work with founders, I think what I'm observing most of the time is they come to us with a very high level hypothesis that is very strong because they know their business, they know their customers. I mean, they can make that hypothesis on intuition, right? Yeah. Or they should be able to. But the gap between that founder's intuition and the pod that is going to go and work on that, let's say build it, even if we just disregard user research and segmentation of your users and business modeling and stuff like that, like the actual build, that gap is huge. And I think that is what I'm realizing is the gap we're filling. It's like, if the -1 is the founder saying, this is a very obvious direction that we need to take the company. That's not a product, it's a direction. It's an addressable problem space. We work in financial services, credit and lending, addressable problem space. It's the place where most of the American neobanks have gone over the last couple of years. It's the place we're seeing the Canadian neobanks go. That's obvious, but the gap from that -1 to some kind of visual prototype, there's this like big part in the middle that I think you and I candidly do very well, and Kinvey as a firm, that's what we're building towards, is a firm that can do that with 8 or 10 people out doing it at different companies, right?
Yeah, completely agreed. And with like some rare exceptions, I think that you are looking at 2 different skill sets. I think there's like the builders who are excellent at being like given a direction and going out there and getting shit done. And then there's the kind of explorers and researchers, and those that are like out there trying to bust their own assumptions and hypotheses and like get a thrill out of that.
I have a former business partner that I started my first fintech with, and he used to describe this as the difference between indoor cats and outdoor cats. I just thought that was so good. So I do that all the time. I describe myself as an outdoor cat. Like, I want to be out there.
Yeah.
Taking a swipe in the face to learn a piece of information that other people are too afraid to go learn, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So yeah, I mean, I think as you're building your teams and building your businesses, it's important to be cognizant of who you're hiring for. And again, I think back to culturally, like a lot of people just want that like get shit done PM, who, they know if they kind of like give something that's semi-crystallized, that go out and like build it and get it worked on. But I've worked with other PMs who they really hesitate before just jumping into the build and really want to methodically go through and understand and highlight gaps in understanding or gaps in the hypothesis before they get moving. And so balance your teams. I actually think that our team is pretty balanced as well, just in terms of we are definitely kind of like highlighting, in the last couple of months that we've got clients who really need that early help. But obviously we've got the actual resources and experience that back up the actual build side of things as well. But I think it's just highlighting. You really need like to have a comprehensive like product team who can do end to end. You probably need a couple of different types of talent.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't even necessarily mean product manager titles, right? I think product design is underutilized in most companies, and I think it's obviously an important part of any product, but in financial services, these are very utilitarian experiences that you're trying to build, and so there's just element of discipline and simplicity, and the customer's trying to get shit done, right? Like the customer, This is not an engagement play. We don't want you in the app, 15 times a day. We want you tapping the card 15 times a day instead of tapping some other card. And so, the context around the user is so big. I have tapped my personal card a few times today and used my business card a few times today. All of the context around that has nothing to do with their app and nothing to do with their user experience. It has to do with me taking the piece of plastic out of my wallet that looks just like all the other ones and works the same as all the other ones. So it's a very nuanced thing to understand who these customers are as well. I thought I wanted to bring up. I feel like this is like trademark. You called this romancing the idea. And I laughed really hard when you sent that over. Can you just explain that to people or to me so that I can explain it to other people? Because that's a slide in the deck now, is romancing the idea. That's what we do.
I mean, listen, we all kind of like want to fall in love, but if we look back and we look at maybe when that's happened, the best part is the act of falling in love. And that period where you're kind of like head over heels for the other person and you just kind of never want it to end. And I guess my point is if you kind of translate that to early stage product ideas, I think like we need to use restraint, right? You'd say I love you on the second date, and like where do you go from there? You're pot committed. And so I really think that there needs to be some like early discipline as you're romancing the idea. You need to explore, maybe more than just physical attractions, and like get to know your idea pretty damn intimately, before you can kind of like just jump in and introduce them to the family. And I think that's kind of what's lacking in a lot of organizations these days is there's just like, we're doing this, I'm in love with this person, we're getting married, and everybody, kind of has to jump on board, despite the fact that, you know, that person might have some very deep, dark secrets that you're going to find out about later. So I'm glad that you like that one.
I think this is why I liked it. It's like it was like implicit within the very
Yeah, just the
short
word.
statement that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this is like I pictured myself ballroom dancing with
Yeah.
this idea
No,
for some
agreed.
reason. It's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to cut it off there. I think. I mean, I certainly don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about romancing the idea anymore. Um,
Fair enough.
how's the family? Everything's good?
Yeah. Yeah, everything's good. Back at school.
That's
Which is
where I was
which
going
is
with that.
pretty nice, not gonna lie. What about you?
Yeah, it's what time is it there? It's 11 a.m. So
Yeah.
very quiet at your house compared to normal.
Extremely.
We would have heard a couple of shrieks by now, I think, right?
Well, I got one kid still half day, so getting picked up right now, but the other ones are full. But, you know, I mean, I think that our obligations just shift to later in the day at this time of
Yeah.
year as the routine set in. You know, I can't imagine how many, like, you know, sports and programs and everything your kids are in, but for me, it's pretty busy.
Not a lot yet, but we're getting there. We're into video games.
Okay.
PlayStation released a game called Astrobot today, which is a version of this came pre-installed on the PS5 called Astro's Playroom, and it's this cute little robot.
Got it.
So that came out last night. I told the kids it wasn't coming out until today because I didn't want them to try to stay up till 10 in the morning. And I woke up at like 5:30 to the sound of like coins being collected.
Oh my gosh.
I went downstairs and the door was closed on the TV room, which was effectively a kid's like
Yeah.
gamer room.
Sure.
And my son was sitting there at 5:30 in the morning to 6:30. I woke up
Wow.
at 6:30, not 5:30. He was sitting there playing it, and I went and I looked at the stats, and I said, "You know, you've played this game for an hour." And I said, "Daniel, you've been up since 5:30. You woke." Oh man, he was desperate to play this game.
Unreal.
You know, product market fit. All right.
There you
Well,
go.
enjoy the weekend, man. It was good to. I love this topic. We'll do another one of these, and maybe we'll bring in one of our friends to talk about user research. Somebody that does
Sure.
this
Sounds great.
professionally and has an academic background in it, because I think that would be very interesting.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, thanks a lot.